On a busy Chicago street, 19-year-old Emily's wheelchair suddenly breaks, leaving her stranded and helpless. Passersby ignore her until 25-year-old mechanic Jake appears, kneeling beside her, ready to change her life forever. One act of kindness turns a terrifying moment into hope, and their lives will never be the same. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Emily had always loved the city. Chicago, with its tall buildings and bustling streets, felt alive to her in a way that made her feel part of something bigger. But today, that energy seemed distant, replaced by a sense of vulnerability she couldn't ignore. She had been heading home from her community college, navigating the familiar streets in her wheelchair. Life hadn't been easy for Emily. Paralyzed from a car accident at 17, she had learned to be independent in ways most people her age never imagined. Yet despite the challenges, she carried herself with quiet confidence and a smile that made strangers pause. The mid-afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street as Emily rolled along the sidewalk, enjoying the gentle breeze. Her wheelchair moved smoothly until, without warning, it jerked sharply to the side. Panic gripped her chest as she realized something was terribly wrong. One of the wheels had come loose, leaving her wheelchair unstable in the middle of a busy road. Horns honked, tires screeched, and people rushed past, too absorbed in their own worlds to notice her struggle. Emily froze, gripping the wheelchair's handles with trembling hands, unsure of what to do next. She tried to call for help, but her phone slipped from her lap, landing on the asphalt and shutting off. The feeling of isolation hit her all at once. Cars passed dangerously, close, some veering slightly to avoid her, while others ignored her completely. She could hear fragments of conversations, snippets of music, and the constant hum of the city, yet no one seemed aware of her. Emily's chest tightened, tears forming in her eyes. She felt exposed and helpless, trapped in a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly. Her wheelchair, her trusted companion, had betrayed her at the worst possible time. Then she saw him. Jake, a young man with grease-stained hands and a warm, approachable face, had noticed her from across the street. At 25, he was no stranger to fixing broken machines, but helping someone in need had always been personal to him. He jogged over without hesitation, his eyes locking onto Emily's in concern. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Emily blinked through her tears, momentarily stunned that someone had stopped. The calm in his voice was like a lifeline, grounding her amid the chaos of the busy street. Jake crouched down, inspecting the wheelchair with practiced hands. He examined the wheels, tested the joints, and quickly identified the issue. Emily watched, mesmerized by his focus and efficiency. There was something comforting about the way he worked, methodical, patient, and completely invested in solving her problem. "I can fix this," he said with quiet confidence. Emily nodded, relief washing over her in waves. She had been stranded for what felt like an eternity, and now someone had arrived not just to help, but to take charge of the situation in a way that felt safe and reliable. As Jake worked, he explained what he was doing. "The wheel's bolt came loose. I can tighten it and replace the part. You'll be rolling smoothly again in no time." Emily listened intently, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had never expected a stranger to stop, let alone take the time to explain and involve her. The city continued around them, indifferent to their small scene, yet in that moment time seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Her heartbeat slowed slightly as she felt the tension in her shoulders ease. Passersby began to notice, some pausing to watch the young mechanic in action. A few muttered compliments, impressed by his skill, but most continued on their way, leaving the scene private and intimate. Emily felt a strange combination of embarrassment and pride. Here she was, vulnerable in the middle of the street, yet somehow supported by someone who genuinely cared. Jake's focus never wavered. His hands moved confidently over the metal frame, tightening screws, adjusting bolts, and making minor repairs as needed. Emily couldn't help but admire his dedication. After a few minutes, the wheelchair was fully repaired. Jake stood and smiled, brushing his hands on his jeans. "There you go. You're good to go," he said. Emily tentatively tested the wheels, rolling forward and back. Smooth, effortless. She couldn't believe it. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say," she whispered, tears now of relief rather than fear. Jake shrugged modestly. "Don't worry about it. Just glad you're okay." Emily's eyes lingered on him, noting the genuine warmth in his smile and the kindness in his demeanor. For a moment, the world seemed different. The noise of the city faded, replaced by a quiet sense of hope. Emily felt a connection she hadn't felt in a long time. Not romantic, not yet, but a simple recognition that there were still good people in the world, willing to stop and help when it mattered most. Jake's presence reminded her that small acts could have profound impacts, that the simplest gesture, a willingness to care, could change someone's entire day, or even life. She had been stranded and helpless, but now she felt empowered again. As she began rolling down the street, Jake walked beside her. He offered to escort her the rest of the way home, ensuring she felt safe navigating traffic and obstacles. Emily hesitated briefly, then accepted. Together, they moved through the streets of Chicago, a small but significant team. Each turn the wheelchair wheels felt lighter, more assured, and Emily couldn't stop smiling. That single encounter had transformed a terrifying moment into something she would remember forever, not just for the rescue, but for the unexpected connection that made her believe in the kindness of strangers. By the time they reached her apartment, Emily felt a spark of hope she hadn't felt in months. The city, once overwhelming, now seemed a place of possibilities. She turned to Jake, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You really changed my day, maybe even my life," she said softly. Jake simply smiled. "Sometimes that's all it takes." And in that quiet, fleeting moment, Emily realized that life had a way of surprising her, of placing the right person at the exact right time. Her broken wheelchair had brought more than a repair, it had brought hope. Emily felt a strange mixture of gratitude and nervous excitement as she wheeled into her apartment building, Jake walking beside her. Her hands gripped the wheelchair handles tighter than necessary, still amazed at how quickly he had fixed her. "I can't believe you just came out of nowhere," she said, her voice tinged with awe. Jake shrugged, brushing imaginary dust from his jeans. "I couldn't just leave. You there? Someone had to help." Emily's heart warmed. In a city that often felt cold and indifferent, encountering genuine kindness felt almost surreal. The memory of helplessness faded slightly as she focused on the reassurance he offered. Once inside, Emily offered him a bottle of water, insisting he sit for a moment. Jake accepted, settling into a chair as she wheeled closer. They began talking, starting with small things: how long he had been a mechanic, her classes, their favorite neighborhoods in Chicago. Jake's voice was easy, full of quiet confidence and warmth. Emily laughed for the first time. That afternoon, the sound lighter than she expected. For a few moments, it was as if the city outside didn't exist. They were simply two people sharing a connection that had sparked from a chance encounter on a busy street. As the conversation continued, Emily felt a desire to know more about Jake, beyond the mechanic's hands that had fixed her wheelchair so skillfully. She asked about his family, discovering that he had grown up just a few miles away, raised in a neighborhood full of old friends and memories. He spoke with humility, never bragging, only explaining his life with simple honesty. Emily found herself drawn to his authenticity, the way he didn't try to impress her, but instead made her feel comfortable. The vulnerability he allowed himself to show made her own vulnerabilities feel safe. Jake noticed the careful attention Emily paid to him, the slight hesitation before she spoke, as though measuring her words. He smiled quietly to himself, realizing she had been through experiences that had forced her to be careful with trust. Her resilience shone through every sentence, every laugh, every small movement. Jake admired it. "You handle everything so well," he said sincerely. Emily shook her head, feeling the familiar sting of modesty. "It's not always easy," she admitted, "but I have to keep going. Life doesn't wait for anyone, right?" Jake nodded, understanding the weight behind her words, and felt a deep respect for her courage. After a few minutes, Emily suggested showing Jake around her apartment, a small but cozy space filled with personal touches, a colorful rug, a few framed photographs, and her college books stacked neatly in a corner. She wanted him to see her life, a reflection of who she was beyond the wheelchair. Jake followed, paying attention to details, asking questions without judgment, showing genuine curiosity. Emily felt comfortable, the walls she often put up around strangers slowly falling away. She realized that in just a few hours, someone she had never met had become a reassuring presence in her life, someone who had seen her at her most vulnerable and treated her with care. As they continued talking, Emily confessed a bit about the challenges she faced daily, navigating the city streets, attending classes, and sometimes feeling isolated. Jake listened intently, never interrupting, nodding in acknowledgement. "It sounds like you've been through a lot," he said gently. Emily smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting despite the heaviness of the topic. "I have, but moments like today remind me that there are still good people around. I guess I just didn't expect to meet someone like you." Jake laughed softly, the sound blending naturally with the hum of city life outside the window. They shared stories of their past, laughing over childhood memories and awkward teenage experiences. Emily told him about her love for drawing, sketching the city's skyline in her spare time, while Jake admitted he had always wanted to build a motorcycle from scratch. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by genuine laughter and occasional thoughtful pauses. Each moment made Emily feel more at ease, more connected. She realized that the initial fear and helplessness she had felt on the street had been transformed into something completely unexpected, a budding friendship that could grow into something even more meaningful. As the afternoon turned into evening, Jake stood to leave, glancing at his watch. "I should get back to the garage," he said, reluctantly. Emily felt a pang of disappointment but masked it with a small smile. "Thank you again for everything today," she said softly. Jake gave her a reassuring nod. "Just remember, you're stronger than you think, and if anything ever happens with your wheelchair, you know where to find me." Emily felt her heart lift, a sense of security she hadn't realized she'd been craving. In that brief encounter, trust had been built and a connection formed. Before he left, Jake suggested they meet again, maybe for a coffee or a walk along the lakefront. Emily agreed, excitement bubbling under her calm exterior. She watched him leave, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, realizing how much her day had changed. What began as a terrifying experience had transformed into an unforgettable encounter, one that promised new beginnings and unexpected friendships. For Emily, life in Chicago had suddenly become brighter, infused with hope, kindness, and the possibility of something extraordinary just around the corner. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Jake. The encounter on the busy Chicago street had left an impression far deeper than she expected. Every time she rolled through her neighborhood, she imagined seeing him walking beside her, offering that calm assurance that had meant so much. She replayed the way he had knelt beside her wheelchair, hands steady and confident, his eyes reflecting genuine care. That moment had transformed fear into hope. She found herself wanting to thank him again, to express the gratitude that words alone could not capture. The city felt different, full of possibilities she hadn't noticed before. Emily decided to visit Jake's garage, curious to see the place where he worked his magic. She had tracked it down using the address he had casually mentioned, a small, bustling repair shop tucked between two larger buildings. The smell of oil, tires, and metal filled the air as she approached. Jake was under a car, focused and entirely in his element. When he noticed her, he straightened up immediately, wiping his hands on a rag. "Emily, hey, good to see you again," he said, smiling warmly. Emily returned the smile, feeling her heart lighten at the sight of him. They spent the afternoon in the garage, talking and laughing as Jake showed her the ins and outs of his work. Emily was fascinated by his knowledge, watching him effortlessly diagnose problems and explain solutions with patience. She asked questions, learning about the different tools, car parts, and techniques he used. Jake's enthusiasm was infectious, making her forget the stress of her everyday struggles. For the first time in months, Emily felt completely relaxed, enjoying a conversation without worry or tension. The connection between them deepened, naturally, each discovering more about the other's personality, dreams, and values, building trust that extended beyond their initial meeting. Jake was impressed by Emily's curiosity and intelligence. He noticed how she asked thoughtful questions, how her eyes lit up. When he explained something technical, it reminded him of his younger self, someone who had once been curious but unsure of the path ahead. "You have a real knack for this," he said sincerely, glancing at her. Sketches of modified wheels and designs she had drawn during their conversation. Emily felt a warm blush rise to her cheeks, not used to being praised for something other than her resilience. "I just like to understand things," she admitted, laughing softly. The garage, full of engines and tools, had become a space where their connection flourished. As the day turned into evening, they stepped outside to the sidewalk. The city was alive with the hum of traffic, glowing streetlights, and the distant sound of music. Emily wheeled herself beside Jake, feeling a sense of companionship she hadn't anticipated. "I never expected a broken wheelchair to lead to this," she said, smiling. Jake chuckled. "Life works in mysterious ways, doesn't it?" Emily nodded, feeling that the randomness of the encounter had brought her something meaningful. They walked along the street, together, talking about dreams, ambitions, and the kind of life they wanted to build, each feeling more connected with every passing moment. Over the next week, they continued meeting. Sometimes it was casual coffee at a nearby cafe, other times a stroll along the lakefront, enjoying the calm water against the skyline. Emily found herself looking forward to these moments, the anticipation making ordinary days brighter. Jake, too, began to realize how much he enjoyed her company, her laughter, her insight, and her ability to find joy even in difficult situations. They shared personal stories, their fears, and the small victories of daily life. Each meeting strengthened the trust and bond between them, building something that neither expected but both welcomed with open hearts. One afternoon, Emily invited Jake to a community event she volunteered at, helping young children with disabilities. Jake agreed without hesitation, impressed by her dedication. He watched as she interacted with the kids, her compassion evident in every gesture. Emily introduced him to the team, explaining how they worked to make the city more accessible. Jake was inspired, seeing her passion and kindness firsthand. By the end of the day, they both realized that their connection wasn't just personal. It extended into shared values and a mutual respect for making the world better, no matter how small the action might seem. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and Jake's friendship blossomed into something deeper. They celebrated small milestones, like fixing her wheelchair, without any issues, or successfully navigating a difficult street intersection together. Each moment brought them closer, their trust and admiration growing steadily. Emily realized that what began as a terrifying experience had evolved into a transformative relationship. She no longer saw the city as a place of danger, but as a landscape where kindness could be found. In unexpected places, Jake had become more than a helper. He had become a part of her life in a meaningful way. Finally, one evening, as the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jake and Emily sat on a bench overlooking the water. Emily wheeled herself closer, feeling the warmth of the moment. "I never thought a broken wheelchair could lead to all of this," she said softly. Jake smiled, taking a deep breath. "Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the best connections." Emily nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and joy. In the midst of a chaotic city, two lives had intersected in a way that neither could have predicted. Single act of kindness had transformed fear into hope, strangers into friends, and perhaps even more.